American fiction may not have anything new to say with the social commentary, especially about black media when you're talking about books, TV, and movies, but it's still able to deliver laughs, a few touching moments, and a little bit of frustration. To summarize the movie, Thelonious, naturally nicknamed Monk, Ellison, is an author who's written a few books, nothing that has been big hits, but like the rest of his family, he has enough of a success as a doctor in his field that he has some kind of validating means of accomplishment. But at this point in Monk's life, he hasn't published a book in quite some time. He's a very disgruntled professor who is starting to get on the administration's nerves, and because of that, he is pushed into a sabbatical of sorts. Unfortunately for Monk, this means going from his LA little bubble going back to Boston, where he left because there's a lot of family drama. What happened with his dad, who committed suicide. His mom's health is in decline. Both of his siblings are getting divorces for different reasons. And for Monk, it's just a lot, especially because there's a lot of issues with his siblings in terms of him being treated as the favorite when it came to their dad, how his sister Lisa and brother Cliff, they really bonded and kind of iced him out of it because of how close Monk was with the parents. And that's the personal drama that we explore in this movie. But probably the main thing that they really focus on is that Monk is jealous of this up and coming writer named Santana Gordon, and she has written this book that is phonetically in Ebonics. So I guess the best example would be Push with Precious and all that. And Monk is upset. Here he is, an author, often relegated to the black section because of his race, even when the topic isn't like the black experience. And he hasn't had a big hit yet. This book about the urban, downtrodden black man or whatever is becoming this huge hit, and it frustrates him to the point where, in a mocking way, he makes his own version of this type of tale, and to his surprise, it's a hit. It gives him the biggest advance he has ever seen, more attention than he's ever gotten, award nominations, and he spends most of the movie trying to reconcile his doctorate education, the works that he has done that his agents say are high quality, yet what makes him money and is getting him fame is, well, granted fame under the pseudonym, is this book that is just everything he has rallied against. And the movie explores how does he reconcile all that's happening in his professional life with his personal life that is complicated mostly because of either his actions or his inactions. So getting to the review section. One highlight for me, even though we're going to mention on the fence topic that kind of challenges the highlight, is that when it comes to supporting characters, they're written in a way where, for example, Cliff. Cliff is a plastic surgeon, doctor like the rest of his family, but he's also a recently out gay man who had a marriage, kids, and all that, and he's now kind of shifting his focus from being that family man, good job, to now being a bit addicted to drugs, undisputably a whore, and just in his mind playing catch up on all the things he didn't get to do or was too afraid to do when he was younger because respectability, trying to impress his parents, especially his father, or who knows what else. So, saying all that, he's a supporting character that's able to get the spotlight sometimes and bask in the glow of it, yet at the same time, I would say he never challenges his Monk's position as the lead of this movie. You're given just enough to appreciate what Sterling K. Brown can do as an actor, and then he takes a step back so that Jeffrey Wright can shine. And I would even say for Lorraine, who is the nurse that's taking care of Agnes, at least up until the point where she can't anymore, she also gets that kind of treatment. She is that person who, more than likely, if you have a black family, you recognize the Lorraine type. Sweet person, smile lights up a room, always gives you a hug that makes you feel like, a kid again when you see them. And she is at the point in her life where Agnes is coming to a point that's beyond her, and with this man named Maynard who's interested in her and probably has been for quite some time, she's ready to explore that relationship. And just watching that gives you like this little subplot of a romance movie that is so cute that, granted, I kind of wish that we would see a movie or even a show where someone like Lorraine falls in love, but I feel like the chances of that happening, even in this whole diverse generation, is not likely to happen anytime soon, but it's still good to have, even if it isn't that small little piece. And honestly, I wish I could say that the other supporting characters had such good subplots too, but we're going to focus on them for the positive as we get into the negatives. First and foremost, when it comes to negative, and it's just a low point for us, and granted, very much deals with our own bias, I do not like the way they had Tracee Ellis Ross in this film. But at the same time, I recognize, if you've seen any Tracee Ellis Ross film in the last couple of years, where they talk about The High Note, or there's one that she had at Tribeca Film Festival that hopefully is coming out soon that I can't remember, but I'll put the name down below. She, for whatever reason, nobody's letting Tracee Ellis Ross just be the lead, period. She is either the co-lead like we saw in Blackish, or else she's a strong supporting character who often is treated as a selling point for something, yet this white girl, was Belle Parley or somebody else, ends up being the actual lead. And yet, all eyes are on Tracee. And I feel when it comes to American Fiction, you see another situation where she could have easily challenged Jeffrey Wright as the lead and made it so that you're more so thinking about where is she when he's talking or going on his little rants or getting into his feelings, rather than focusing on his performance and what he's talking about. So, in terms of how they handled her character, I get it, because her charisma can be a little bit of an eclipse, even though she is definitely the type of actor who wants to share and work with somebody in the scene. But again, she's one of those characters who had so much potential, even if she was relegated to the same position we see Agnes in to a certain point, Centara and others. But I don't know, it's just frustrating because you know what Tracee Ellis Ross can do, and just how they did her character in a lot of the women, arguably outside Lorraine, is just so frustrating. But before we get into that, I'm not about to do an ad because we're not that special, but one of the on-the-fence topics for us is that in terms of its commentary about black media, or even the issue of black media in terms of just because a black person created, why does it have to be sectioned off? This film doesn't really do or say anything new or notable. From Spike Lee's Bamboozled back in the 90s, Aaron McGruder's Boondocks, and probably others that are just not coming to mind right now, anything that American Fiction says, you probably heard it before. The only difference is, being that Monk is a doctor, well, has a doctorate rather, it's not in the same comedic tone, is a little bit more serious. And this isn't to say that when it comes to American Fiction, it's not a comedy. It's a comedy, but I don't want to call it a smart comedy because that feels slightly offensive, but it's definitely the type of comedy where it's not trying to go over the top. For even when Monk is writing his ghetto tale, urban tale, whatever you want to call it, and we see Keith David play out the words and then question it midway about what are you talking about, and kind of breaking the fourth wall with not the audience but with Monk, you get that this is supposed to be satirical and kind of poke at what society keeps pushing in terms of what is the authentic black experience, especially from a white perspective. But again, nothing said here. Even when Satara kind of counters Monk's sort of hatred over how he can't be successful as a black person without tapping into this pandering market, at least in his mind, a pandering market, it's just like Sintara's main point is there's a market for it there. These people do actually exist, whether you like it or not. So you sell to the market because it's like, so I don't keep making this a ramble. For a lot of indie directors, like I think the dude Taiki Waititi, if I'm saying his name right, he mentions that, I think he only mentioned that recently, he only did the 4 movies because he was poor, because he needed money. And we also heard that with the girl who played, what's her name, in West Side Story, and also in a new Hunger Games film. For a lot of people in the entertainment industry, you are going to have to do things that may not speak to you, you're not passionate about, but because it pays well, you do it because then that allows you a room to actually do something you're passionate about. You know, it's like Tim Burton doing Alice in Wonderland, which, yeah, it has a specific style on it, but it's not something he's passionate about. But because he has the money, it increases his clout and all that, it allows him to do a Frankenweenie, or something that's a little bit more experimental, maybe doesn't have the same marketability in some ways. Get what I'm trying to say? But getting off that, because that's probably like an essay that I'm not qualified to do. The last point is that I wish that we got more out of the ladies of this film. And when I wrote about this for the website, it kind of felt like I was nitpicking a little bit, just because, you know, there's always that worry that when you're watching a movie that has a predominantly black cast, is there a black tax involved? Are you looking for something bad just because it's too good, and you don't want to seem like, because a bunch of people that look like you will share a culture, that you're being easy on them? But truth be told, I think similar to like the early seasons of The Chi on Showtime, now Paramount Plus, you can see that a lot of the women, when it comes to this, they don't necessarily pass that Bechdel or whatever test. I can't remember what the name is called. In terms of everything is pretty much about the men in their life. Yes, each woman has an established backstory, oftentimes affected by whatever man left them, because Lisa, she's going through a divorce and her ex-husband took most of her money. The woman who plays Erica Alexander, who plays Coraline, who ends up being Monk's girlfriend in the film, she's going through a breakup, but she's also noted to be a lawyer, and I should note that Lisa is a OBGYN. Lorraine's in service to Agnes, but her storyline eventually shifts to her being Maynard's girlfriend and then wife. Agnes's story, it eventually becomes less about her having Alzheimer's and, you know, her kids having to take care of her, to it being a question of what she went through with their father, because Lisa, Cliff, and also Monk's father apparently was a notorious cheater. And I don't know, I don't want to say that these ladies are one note, but it feels like once their backstory was established, their development kind of got cut off there, and after that, it's all about how they could support a male character in their development, or else the story that the male character was going through. And it's frustrating because with talents like Erica Alexander, Tracee Ellis Ross, and these other faces which you surely have seen somewhere before, but this is probably one of the first times they have had so much screen time in the movie and have been so prominent. It's hard to not get frustrated when opportunities like this come up and you know they're very excited, they have a movie coming out and this is having decent press, yet they don't really get the shine. They get to be on screen and get seen, but they don't really get a full-fledged opportunity that could lead to more opportunities for them. Overall, there's no doubt that American Fiction is entertaining. However, there's something about it that feels like it's trying to be that new, modern, or perhaps better financed and marketed version of something you've heard or seen before, specifically regarding its social commentary. And then when it comes to everything else, particularly the family drama, it's good enough to leave you satisfied, but not so good that it wants you to have more. I mean, ultimately, it just feels like American Fiction meets expectations, but by no means pursues exceeding them in any way you see it could have.